Today, I sit down with first-gen, third-year student Tati. Like nearly 50% of first-gen students, she began her post-secondary educational journey at a community college. Tati enrolled in the Direct Connect program, which helps students transfer to a university after getting their associate's degree. Tati talks about the differences between the two types of institutions, what her transition was like, and whether she would choose the same path again. Welcome, Tati.
Hello.
I'm so excited to be talking to you today about your journey. Your journey is one that a lot of our listeners will have experienced. So I'm so excited to hear about your experience. So to start off, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Tati. I go to the University of Central Florida where I'm studying communication sciences and disorders, and I'm studying to become a speech language pathologist. And I work at a local boba shop.
So you did in the state of Florida, which is called Direct Connect. And for those of our listeners that don't know what that is, it is where you do 2 years at a community college or a state college, as we call them here, and then you transfer to a university. Tell me what factors played in your decision to do that route versus starting at a 4-year institution.
So my biggest factor in this was financial assistance. At Valencia, I received a full 2-year scholarship to be in this program called Bridges to Success. And I knew I needed to save up and buy my own car. So I decided to start at Valencia so I could save up money faster. And then by the time I got to UCF, I would have my own source of transportation.
What was your first day at Valencia like?
So my first day was actually not that intimidating. I started in the summer term B in 2019. And the program that I was in, Bridges to Success, put us in classes with people from Bridges to Success. So my very first class, there was only 8 of us, and I had recognized everyone. And pretty shortly, we all became like closer friends, and it just didn't feel too intimidating. It definitely felt pretty comfortable, and it was nice being in a small classroom with just a few other people.
What do you remember feeling on that first day at Valencia?
I felt a sense of community. I definitely felt that, like starting at a new school, you don't typically know too many people, especially like in your classes. So I was just so grateful that I was at least a part of a scholarship that put everyone together. I went to East Campus, so it was an extremely small campus. And so there was only about 20 of us in the whole program. So I got to know everyone pretty well.
What was your last day at Valencia like?
So my last physical day was in March 2020. I didn't know it was going to be my last day. All I remember is that I was coming out of my chemistry lab. I had gone out a little early, and I was just excited for spring break. Then, they extended our spring break, and I never went back. The rest of my time, I did it online, and my last day online was just a sense of relief, like finishing my last test, and I was like, oh, I'm done.
So then tell me about your first day at UCF.
So my first day at UCF was my first day back at an in-person institution in almost 2 years. And I remember I was nervous about parking, but thankfully my first class was at 7:30 a.m. on a Monday, so parking wasn't bad. My class was a lot bigger than my classes were at Valencia, so it was a little more intimidating. But it was my first class in my actual major, and I fell in love with the subject immediately.
How did it feel to be back in person?
So great. I personally just love going out of the house and studying. Fully during most of COVID, after that kind of went down. And so I was at UCF again. And so I was able to have places where I could go and study. And then on my first day of school, I had like a 3-hour time period in between classes. So I would just go to the library and do my homework. And I just love being on campus and doing my homework in an environment like that.
Tell me about the differences between being at Valencia Community College and being at UCF, a university. What did you notice as a student?
I've noticed a couple major differences. One of them being the campus sizes, of course. The campus and the amount of people at Valencia is extremely small in comparison to UCF. I could walk from one side of the campus at Valencia to the other side within 10-15 minutes. And at UCF, it's so much bigger. I'm constantly finding new places where I can go and study or hang out or even eat. And definitely love how UCF offers a lot more clubs. At Valencia, there was only like a few, and none of them really interested me. So it was really hard for me to get super involved other than my Bridges program. So I definitely love how much bigger UCF is. Another thing I did notice are the people at Valencia versus UCF. At Valencia, I have noticed there's a lot more people of color, a lot more first gen students, people who are like there for themselves financially, either working full-time jobs or two jobs or even being parents. And then at UCF, it's a lot more, you can tell like people come from like families who are paying for their school, for their housing, for their cars. So that was definitely a big like dynamic that I noticed. At Valencia, it kind of gave me a sense of community because I felt like I could relate a little more with the people there. Like a lot of my friends, they had to use like the bus transportation. Luckily, I had my mom and my sister who would lend me their cars every now and then before I got my own. And at UCF, it definitely feels a lot more intimidating, especially when you're like a first gen student. But in the end, it's not too bad, but that is definitely a thing that I didn't expect.
Did you notice any differences between the professors at Valencia versus UCF?
Honestly, I don't know if I'm just like really like I like a lot of people, but I've definitely had the best professors at both institutions. Like I've gone along with a lot of the professors I've had. So far, no differences.
Would you categorize your transition as easy or difficult?
I would definitely say easy, mostly because at Valencia, they do the direct connect straight to UCF. So they have a whole office of people who are designated to helping students do that. But again, I was online, so I didn't really get to use that office as much. But I did have my Bridges program, and all the advisors helped me constantly. Like if I ever had questions, I'd email them and they send me an email very fast. That was another great thing about Valencia since it was so small. I always got emailed back within a couple days.
So were you nervous to start UCF?
Oh, yes, I was. I was more excited than nervous, but I was nervous because I was starting there and I had no friends in any of my classes because I'd finished my general education and none of my friends are in the same major as me. You know, eventually you settle in and you make friends in the major, so it's all good now.
So what supports did you have to help you make that transition?
I had the support of Valencia advisors who knew how to do the entire process. Um, I also had help from SOS. I asked for letters of recommendations for UCF scholarships there. And my sister's ex-boyfriend, he was a person who also did Valencia to UCF. So I remember one day I was asking him to help me with the whole application and what to put down for certain boxes. So that was helpful.
You are going to wrap up your junior year soon.
Oh, I know.
So tell me what comes next.
Well, I'm wrapping up my junior year, but I have to go to graduate school for speech language pathology. And those programs usually begin in the fall. So I'm thinking about extending my graduation to either next summer 2023 or next fall 2023. That way it gives me time to study for the GRE, take the GRE, do well in my classes, and maintain my GPA and have enough time, because if I graduate fall 2023 next year, then it gives me a whole year to have a mental rest before starting grad school and doing that for 2 to 3 years. So hopefully graduate school within 2024, and then I'll become a speech language pathologist.
So looking back, would you take the same route again, starting at a 2-year and then moving to a 4-year?
Absolutely, I would. It was so beneficial to me financially and with everything that happened, like for in my circumstances with COVID, I would have had to have done my classes online anyways. So it's nice that I was able to save a lot more money that way.
Your mom was going to school at the same time you were.
Yes.
What was that like?
At first, it was very hectic because it started last year, or I guess 2 years ago now. And she was in it for a couple months before she dropped the program because it was super rigorous. It was very chaotic. It felt like a lot for everyone, especially for me and my sister, because we have a younger brother that we have to help take care of. But then when she started again last year, it was not too bad. We were all able to work out things with each other, and it was almost like we were roommates at a point. Like we would switch turns, like cooking and doing things. But yeah, that was definitely an interesting experience. It was just wild always seeing my mom studying, and she would study way harder than me because like her classes were way faster paced.
How did you feel when you graduated Valencia?
I felt so relieved. I felt very relieved to finally be done, partially because I was also online. So I just knew that once I started UCF, I would be back in person. I did feel a sense of accomplishment. I was excited because at least, like, if anything were to, like, somehow happen, at least I could say I have an associate's degree.
How did you feel when you saw your mom graduate?
Oh my gosh, I felt so proud. It felt like that moment was so overdue. Like, I had just the whole year she was struggling, but I knew the entire time, like, she's gonna graduate. Like, she is. She's just gonna graduate. And then finally seeing her graduate was just the proudest moment that a daughter could be for their mother.
So, what do you think it's going to feel like when you graduate UCF?
Honestly, I feel like it'll be similar to Valencia because at this point, I feel like I'm graduating every 2 years because I have my high school graduation, Valencia, now UCF, and then eventually my master's. But it definitely is going to feel very, very, very more of an accomplishment because I'll have done a whole 4 years and have an actual bachelor's degree. So, but it won't feel like a relief because I'll have to go to grad school still.
Have you picked out what you're going to write on your graduation hat yet?
I have no idea yet. I'm still thinking about it. But I was thinking, I forgot what it was, but there was a SpongeBob quote I was thinking about doing. And it's funny because my sister also did a SpongeBob quote for hers.
If you had one piece of advice for a first gen student who is at a community college right now and wants to go to a 4-year institution, what piece of advice would you give them?
Do not compare yourselves to others. I say this because when I was at Valencia, the first like semester and a half, because this was before COVID, I was constantly thinking I should have just went to UCF. I kept seeing all of my friends and peers like going to UCF, FSU, out of state colleges, and I really wanted to be there in that big environment. And so I pretty much felt like I rushed through Valencia, just trying to graduate and get to UCF. But now I think back at it, and I definitely felt like I should have enjoyed Valencia more because, you know, in the end, it's just like an experience and it's something you want to, enjoy in the moment. You don't want to rush through anything. And I feel like most of it was just because I was comparing myself to other people. Like if I wasn't doing that, I feel like I would have been, better off. Just like being at Valencia, being fine with where I was, but that was definitely a thing. And I feel like that piece of advice could also go a long way in life to, other things like in other jobs or life situations. So, yeah.
Well, I cannot wait to check in with you in a year and a half, 2 years to see what that quote is that you picked. And I know you're
Oh,
going to send
yes.
me a picture, so I can't wait.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, Tati, thank you so much for chatting with me today and sharing your journey.
I cannot wait for our audience to listen, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being asked to come on here. So hopefully this helps anyone else.
A special thanks to Tati for joining me today and opening up about her transition from Valencia to the University of Central Florida. For a first-gen student, Tati's path is pretty common. I hope you enjoyed hearing her story and it gave you insight into what it's like to make the leap from a 2-year to a 4-year college. It's not always easy, even for the strongest students, but with the right support, it can certainly be done. If you enjoyed listening to Tati's story, shoot me a note on our social media at How to College First Gen on Instagram and Facebook. I can't wait until our next chat.